Hey everyone, welcome back. This week's series is based on a DM I received from Aries here, who said, I want historical gainers or gappers lists above 10 or 15% so I can analyze why these stocks ran up and what setup was there. Let's say the list is of all the listed stocks which tickers gapped up by a certain amount. I want to extract all those tickers with a symbol, date, price data, and earnings if any, and news if any was there. Then we can add other filters like if the market cap is above 500 million or below, just to figure out small cap versus mid cap versus large cap. And sure, of course, we can talk about this. And so that's what I'm going to talk about over the course of the next several videos. So the first thing we'll do is some data exploration, and I'm going to do that using Google Colab, and I'm going to share this notebook with you down below. And so what we'll do is download some historical data, as we often do, and I'll show you how to do a scan for gappers and determine which stocks have gapped up or down by a certain amount, and you can specify how large this gap or how small this gap should be, and scan for ones that went up by a certain percentage or down by a certain percentage. We'll also visualize this data using a Python package called mplfinance, and we'll explore what happened when these stocks gapped up. As you can see here, I'm showing the plot of Twitter stock, and you can see what happened after this Elon Musk news was announced. Twitter stock gapped up, and it looks like it continued for a bit after that. And we'll explore, is it a good idea to buy this stock whenever it gaps up and ride that momentum, or is it better to fade that gap? Next, I'll show you how to use a news API in order to fetch news for a particular stock symbol or symbols. So maybe you want to piece together why a stock may have gone up or gapped down, and maybe you want to classify the news to determine what types of news may cause a stock to gap up or gap down. So here we're going to explore how to fetch news data from a news API. So you can see right here, I wanted to know, why is Shopify stock doing so poorly? Why did it gap down? And I can retrieve that bit of news right here. Netflix reported earnings. They reported negative subscriber growth, and that resulted in other growth stocks selling off after that. Not only can we fetch historical news data in a Jupyter notebook, we can also stream real-time news data as it happens. And I'm going to show you how to do that using WebSockets. I have Visual Studio Code open, and you can see I'm connected to a WebSocket, and I sent a WebSocket message to subscribe to all the news in real time, or I can subscribe to particular symbols, and down below you can see real-time news is streaming in as we speak. I just got a news alert about Vail here. And let's go ahead and check out what is going on with Vail. So I have TradingView open here, and look at Netflix's big gap down. And there you go. This is an hourly chart showing ever since the beginning of April, it looks like Vail has been on the way down. And this provides you a way to get structured news data in real time as it happens. Next, we'll take a look at this article by Quant Rocket that explores this question: should you buy or sell stocks that gap down? They explore this data and load a list of all common stocks using Zipline. And so they use this pipeline to get all common stocks, check if they're liquid, and they have to be above a certain moving average. Then they go through and backtest this and plot the returns if you were to buy the gap and if you were to sell the gap. And according to this article, the performance is different depending on whether it is a large cap stock or a small cap stock. And of course, we're not just going to passively read an article and point at some charts and backtest. This is a very hands-on channel, so we're going to actually write some codes that execute trades in the real live stock market and see what happens. Like, I don't know what's going to happen yet. And so we're going to take the code that we write in this video, in this Jupyter notebook that scans for stocks that gapped up and gapped down, and we're going to incorporate that code into some scripts that we can deploy on a real server. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And so we're going to make this code run every morning, and on that morning, it's going to check for stocks that gapped up and gapped down, and we can execute different types of orders. And so we're going to try out several different order types. So we're going to find the stocks that gap down, and then we'll sell some of them short using just a regular market order and also using a bracket order. And then some of the stocks that gap down, we will buy. And so we'll place a limit order for some of them, and we'll also place a buy order with a trailing stop percentage on some of the other orders. And so some of these positions we may get stopped out of, for instance, this one with a trailing stop, or this bracket order when we either reach our take profit price or our stop price. And then some of the positions we'll let run the whole day, and at the end of the day, we'll cancel all of our orders and close all of our open positions. And so at the end of the day, we're going to be in cash. And then finally, we won't just run this code on our laptops. One unique thing about this channel is that we sometimes take these scripts and put them up on a server. And so we'll take these scripts and put them onto a virtual server using Linode. And as you can see here, I'm connected to a server via SSH, and there's a trade log and a directory with my code in it. If I look at my cron tab here, I'm running different scripts at different times of the day. So at the open, I might want to go long or go short. At the end of the day, I may want to liquidate. And so I'll show you how to set that up using cron. And we can also log the results of all those trades to a trade log here. And if I open my log file, I can see all the different trades that were made on a given day in my log file. I see a timestamp, what I bought or sold short, what the symbol was, the number of shares I bought or sold short, and the price at which I did it. And you can make this log message look however you want. You can store this information in a database for further analysis so that you can make tweaks and change your strategy in the future. As we all know, it can be very risky to try short selling all these volatile tech stocks. Fortunately, all of this experimentation and exploration is possible thanks to my sponsor, Alpaca, who provides a stock and crypto trading API. And as you can see right here, they provide a paper trading and live trading environment. That way, when we see articles like this that recommend we short certain types of stocks, we can try this out in a paper trading environment with hundreds of thousands of dollars and see how it would have behaved. We can have this run on our server day after day, and we can see not only how it performs on a backtest, but how it performs in some more realistic market conditions before we put our real money on the line. So I don't ask for much on this channel, but please like and subscribe and visit Alpaca and sign up using the link below. All right, so here I am in Google Colab. So if you watched the last couple of videos, you may have noticed I've started to incorporate Jupyter notebooks. That way I don't have to type out every single thing line by line, and it saves a little bit of time on the video. And also, some of you just want to do some data exploration, and so it's easier for you to work in a Jupyter notebook without setting up your own environment. And so since this is just the data exploration piece of the series, I thought I'd work in a Jupyter notebook. And when we get to actually trading this and deploying it to a server, we'll use Visual Studio Code. So here I am in Google Colab, and the first couple of things we need to do is install any Python packages we need that are not already bundled into this environment. I'm using the Alpaca Trade API, and I'm also using mplfinance in this video. And if I put !pip inside of Google Colab, this lets me install those Python packages in this notebook. And that way they're available in this notebook and I can use them in my code. All right. So you can see right there, it's installing the Python packages that I need and all of the dependencies. And it successfully installed Alpaca Trade API and mplfinance. The next thing I'm doing here is importing some other packages I need. Date, time, and pandas are already built in. Since I just installed mplfinance, I'm importing it as MPF. And I'm also importing Alpaca Trade API and some of the packages we need under it. So we need the REST API, and we also need these timeframes here. So they define a number of constants. That way, if we want to fetch data on the daily time frame or the 15-minute time frame or the 1-minute time frame, we have these time frame units that we can specify. The next thing I'm importing is getPass here, and what that allows me to do is actually retrieve my API key and my API secret. So on this channel, I use an API key to authenticate against Alpaca, and so I generated a new key and secret key in my paper trading environment. And so if you have an Alpaca account, do that now, and you can get that key and enter it in right here. And so when I run that, what it does is hide this on the screen. And then so I can copy my API key to this input field, so I'll do that. And that's nice since I don't have to show you my API key on the screen when I'm recording this video, and I don't necessarily need to delete my API key, right? So I'm gonna put that in there and hit enter. And then also I don't need to distribute my API keys with this notebook when I share it with you online. So that's run now, and I should have my API key and my secret key set up. I think there's another way to pass this to the environment. That's the way I'm using for now. Okay. So the next thing I need to do is make a new instance of the Alpaca REST API. So I'm saying API equals REST, and this is a new instance of REST, and I pass it my API key, which I just entered above, my secret key, which I entered above as well, and I give it a base URL. And I'm okay with using the paper trading API here since I'm not doing any live trading here. And so now that we have the API set up, what do we want to do? So if you'll recall, Aries was interested in finding all of the stocks that gapped up or gapped down by a certain percentage on a given day. And Aries was also interested in whether it was a large cap or a small cap or a mid cap stock. So there's a few ways to get a list of all of the stocks available and filter out whether they're large cap, small cap, or mid cap stocks. One way to get all of the assets is if you have the Alpaca API, you can do api.listassets, and that'll fetch you the entire universe of tradable stocks. And you can also use another API to determine whether the market cap is above a certain threshold. Another easy way to get a list of small cap and large cap stocks is just to take advantage of some of the ETFs that are out there. And so the Russell 2000 is an index of small cap stocks. And so I've included that URL right here. And if I go to that URL in my browser, you'll see I go to one of the iShares ETF web pages here, and I can scroll down and I should be able to find all the different holdings. So if I click here on holdings, that'll show me all the different holdings, and then I'm able to actually download these as well. So if you go right here, you can see they have an Excel file here. And if I download that, that gives me a CSV file. And in this CSV file, I can see all of the different symbols and market values associated with them. And so if I just want to grab this data, I can actually copy this column. And so one quick way to do this, I can just take that entire column and copy it to a file here. So this is Visual Studio Code, right? And so I can just copy this in Visual Studio Code, and I can just clean this up. This is very quick. See how quick I'm going to do this? So I'm going to delete that. And now that's just a bunch of symbols on individual lines. And then we just got to clean this data, and we can get this into a Python list, since Alpaca accepts a list of symbols, and we can get all of the historical data at once. So how do I go from this line by line to a Python list? Well, we can just use regular text manipulation. And so I can go to Visual Studio Code and do the find replace. And I can click this little guy here to do a regular expression. And then I can do find \n. And that'll find all of the line endings. So you see how the line endings are highlighted right there. And what do I want to replace that with? What if I just do quotation mark, comma, quotation mark? Boom, just like that. I have a comma, a separated list. And then I go to the very beginning of the line, put another quotation mark there, right? And then I can go to the end of the line. And so I've already done this, and you can see how I can just grab a quick list there, and then I just put this in the notebook for you. Likewise, you can do a similar thing for the NASDAQ 100 and the SPY. It's very easy to find these tables that let you download them, and then you can just split them up into a list. And so here I'm including QQQ and SPY, and in the Visual Studio Code code that I'm going to share, I'm including IWM as well. And so you can choose which symbols you want to use. And so let's say I want to see the behavior of large cap stocks. I can just use the S&P 500 or the Dow or big tech, right? And so I'm going to look at the SPY symbols here, and I just have those in a regular list. And then with Alpaca, I'm just going to do api.getBars, and all that needs is a list of symbols, and I have a list of symbols here for the S&P 500, and I need to give it a time frame. So I'm going to give it the daily time frame, because we want to find stocks that gapped up overnight, so we just need all the daily open, high, low, close data. And then we also need a date range. So you can either get the current day or a date range. And so I'm going to say the start, I want yesterday, and then the end, I want that to be today. And so to do that, to get what yesterday's date is dynamically, I can do today equals datetime.date.today. And then for yesterday, I can do a today, which I calculated there, and then subtract a time delta. So I'll say whatever today's date is, subtract from that date object 1 day, and then I'll get yesterday's date. All right. Or I can hard code a date object here. And so for this particular example, I wanted to look at a specific day. And so I'm going to look at April the 4th and April the 1st. So one was a Friday and one was a Monday. So actually for this calculation above, there are a few edge cases. One, whether it's a weekend, and two, whether there was a holiday like Easter or Good Friday or one of those type of holidays in the US if you're using those stocks. And so in those particular cases, you want to import the Alpaca calendar or another financial calendar so that you can handle those edge cases. So what I'm doing here is getting all the daily bars for a large set of symbols, so all the S&P 500 symbols at once, and I'm getting that data for April 1st and April 4th for the ticker symbols. You see A all the way to Z, so this is actually over 1,000 rows here, so all the S&P 500 plus a few more like Alphabet Series B or whatever, and so it ends up being 1,006 rows right there. And so how do I know which of these gapped up overnight? So we want to look at the current date, this date of interest, April 4th, and see whether it gapped up a certain percentage from the close the day before. So to do that, we care about the close the day before, which is right here, and then we care about the open of today. And so we need to calculate some type of percentage there. And so we want to operate on an entire column in pandas at once. And so what we want to do is get the previous close in the same row as the current day. And so what I can do is just create a new column called previous close. So we have open, high, low, and close. What I want to do is create a new column called previous close, and then I can just say bars.close.shift1. And what that does is get the previous row and shift it one row, and then I'm going to assign that to previous close. And if I run this, you can see the outcome here. I have April 4th for the symbol A. You can see I have a close of 134.81 and a previous close of 133.97. And that value came from the previous row, 133.97, which was the previous close, and shifting it down one and assigning it to this new column. Likewise, if you look at the end here, ZTS, the previous close was 191.11. And if you look up here, the previous close was 191.11. And so we have the close right next to the previous close there. So now that we have the previous close assigned here and on the same row as the current open, we can go ahead and get rid of these April 1st dates. So since we're not looking at any of the other data at the moment. And so what I'm going to do here is filter down these bars and just include the April 4th dates. So I'm going to create a brand new data frame here. So I'm just going to make a copy of this, but only with the April 4th dates, because that's all I really care about at the moment. And so this is called bars. I'm just going to filter down the bars and look at the index. So the index contains a timestamp here, and I'm going to filter them down to only include the dates. So the dates that match today's date. So I'm going to get today's date in ISO format, which is like 2022-0404, like that. And I'm going to only fetch the rows that have the timestamps date equal to today's date, and I make a copy of that in filtered. And when I run that, you see I just have April 4th. Once I've done that, I just have one row for every single symbol here, and I have the previous close and the current open, and I can easily do the percentage calculation here. So I'm going to set filtered percent. So I'm going to make a new column called percent here, and I'm going to set it to filtered open divided by filtered previous close, and I'm going to print that out. And now there's a new column called percent. If the number is less than 1, so like 0.99, you know that the stock went down by a certain amount. And if the number is over 1, then you know the stock went up. So I know the percentage the stock went up or down. So to find the ones that gapped up by a certain percent, so for instance, to find the stocks that gapped up by greater than 3%, I can do a filtered, and I can filter that down to ones where the percent is greater than 1.03. And if I run that, you'll see that gets me Twitter stock and Zebra. And on that Elon Musk news, as we mentioned, the previous close in this case was 39.31 on that Friday. And the next morning, the stock gapped up big to 47.98. So it gained 22% over the weekend. And I hadn't even looked at this one, why it gapped up and down. I'm going to look for it real quick. And so it looks like that one was due to an upgraded price target from Morgan Stanley. So Aries, if you're still watching this, if you want to know if it went up by 10% or 15%, you can change this number to 1.10 or 1.15. Likewise, if you want all of these stocks that gap down by a certain amount, you can filter by the percentage again. So if it's less than 0.98, you know that it gapped down by over 2%. So here's my gap down list. You can see that Starbucks gapped down on this particular day. So the previous close was 91.49, and then the open on Monday was 87.84, and the percent here was 0.96. So it gapped down roughly 4%. So now we have two data frames. We have a collection of stocks that gapped up and a collection of stocks that went down. And we have all these timestamps, open, high, low, close, volume, trade count, VWAP, and so forth. But in our particular case, we're looking for a list of symbols that we want to get news on or that we want to trade. So we just want a list of symbols. So how do we extract these symbols from this pandas data frame? Well, that's very easy. We just access that column. So we do gap downs. We get the symbol column. So we use these quotes symbol, and then we call .toList. If we run that, that just gets a list of just these symbols. And so it goes from a data frame to just a list of symbols. And then we can pass that to Alpaca again to get news for those symbols or to get data on a different time frame. So let's say once we know the ones that gapped up and down, we want the 15-minute time frame for those symbols. We can call get bars again just for a select few number of symbols for further analysis intraday. So while we're doing some data exploration in a notebook here, I thought I would do some additional data visualization. And since I haven't talked a lot about this Python package on the channel, I thought I would introduce mplfinance for those that are unfamiliar. So this package, mplfinance, is designed specifically for people that use matplotlib specifically for finance, and so has a lot of shortcuts because it can assume that you're working with financial data. So for instance, Twitter, which we just discussed, if I want to go further back and fetch all the days for the year and look at it on multiple time frames, I can get all the daily data for 2022. And once I have all this data in a data frame, I can just call mpf.plot, give it my data frame, and just like that, I have this chart of Twitter for the year, and I can see that big gap up. This library also makes it very easy to plot other chart types. I don't use a lot of these chart types, but it's nice to know they're there. Some people in the comments have asked about like Renko charts and point and figure charts and things like that. So if I just do type equals Renko, it'll show me this type of chart. If I don't pass anything, it just does this type of bar chart by default. If I want just a line chart and I want to plot the volume as well, I can plot a line chart, and you can see this heavy volume underneath. So it automatically knows how to plot this volume on a separate figure right there. So you don't have to like add these figures in matplotlib and figure out how to connect them together to form this chart. So this makes it very easy, and maybe you want to trade a certain way depending on whether there's high volume on the gap up or not. There's also these point and figure charts, which I also don't know much about, but I've seen other people that like to use these for whatever reason. And of course, you can plot a candlestick chart, which I personally find easier to read and use. And you can also do MAV to plot a moving average. And there's a variety of other parameters that you can pass in to plot various visualizations, indicators, whatever you want to put on a financial chart. Chances are mplfinance can do it. So once we found which stocks gapped up or gapped down on a given day, we may want to drill deeper and explore this data on a different time frame to see what happened next. And so right here, I can get the bars for all of the symbols that gap down, and I can get it on a different time frame by using this time frame object. And let's say I want to get the behavior on the 15-minute time frame, and I just want to look at today's date. So you can see for the start, I did today's date, and for the end, I did today's dates. So if my code ran today and I know which symbols gap down today, I can look at the current day and monitor the behavior. And so here I'm just getting the bars on the 15-minute interval for the current day, and I can study after Starbucks stock gap down how it behaved throughout the rest of the day. For instance, I may ask the question, how did stocks that gap down perform the first 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and 1 hour of trading? So I can filter down this data frame of 15-minute bars to just the first 15 minutes just to see how these stocks behaved. So here we have Starbucks stock at the open, and you can see what it looked like 15 minutes later. And you can go further and further with this exploration depending on what you're trying to do. You can look at the first 30 minutes of the day. You can look at the first hour of the day. You can look at the volume, the VWAP. If you want to look at if it has a certain amount of momentum and you think it's going to mean revert, or if you think it's going to continue, or you can look at a longer time frame to see if it gapped down but it's still above a certain moving average, and so on and so forth. But that's it for the first video in this series. I just wanted to give you an overview of what we're going to be covering, and I wanted to answer the first question on how to scan for a list of stocks that gapped up or gapped down by a certain percentage. In the next video, we'll answer Aries' second question on fetching news data for any of these symbols. And that's it for now. Stay tuned for the next video in the series. Thanks.